Hey, it's your girl Abby, aka New Age Coach here, and I am lighting the way for those on their way to the light. And to my soul vibers, that is those of you who are already subscribed, thank you. And anyone new just tuning in, welcome. On this channel, we talk all things self and soul development. So if you like that vibe and want to join the tribe, hit subscribe. In this episode of Coaching New Age Coach, which is a series that I put out about once a month where I interview fantastical, amazing human beings doing amazing things in this world. And for this episode, I want to take you along to introduce someone very special to me. So not even going to do a big formal introduction here. You'll have to watch the rest of the video to see how this goes. Let's do it. You got the stuff?
Is that look for heavy?
I need to see it. I need to check it out. Make sure it's legit. Look what kind of quality grade we working with here. Perfect. Just kidding, just kidding. I don't know what you were thinking, but get your mind out of the gutter because what we have here is some good quality, grade A, butterfly tea.
All organic.
All organic, baby. So come join us as we make this, and then we'll get right into this week's episode of Coaching New Age Coach with my special guest right here.
The flyest guest you ever had.
Butterfly Pea Flower Tea is a caffeine-free herbal beverage, and it's made from a specific plant. And more realistically, it's a combination of dried blue pea flowers and lemongrass. And it just is so mesmerizing. Like, its colors change and it tastes delicious, hot or cold. And not to mention, it is chock full of antioxidants and other amazing benefits. For example, butterfly pea flower tea is said to be a mood enhancer. And I mean, it's like literally a mood ring, except it's in tea version. It's definitely a mood. And the tea is said to have stress-busting effects. It helps reduce the symptoms of anxiety. And it also refreshes your brain and helps keep you energized. And plus, again, it's just so beautiful to look at. So once water's added to the tea, the deep blue liquid changes color like you saw, and that's all based off the pH level of whatever's added next. So when you squeeze some lemon or add in a bit of lime or citrus juice, that blue changes to purple. Like, it is just the most beautiful, beautiful thing. Soul Vibers, you're probably wondering who it is sitting next to me, and I'm so excited to bring my guest today, who is none other than my brother Ben, and he is also known as Clip ST, and he is a man of many talents and gifts, and today we're going to explore all that. So for example, his most recent endeavors include creating his own Christian clothing line, which we're gonna talk about his brand that we're both repping here, from his hat and shirt and what I'm wearing. He's getting into the embroidery game, so if you need anything specialized made, he can help you out. Some of you have already seen this hat on different episodes that I've made. And he also is just really heavily based into volunteerism and his community through his church, right? He's a Christian sitting here. He does e-groups weekly, and we'll get into all that. So Ben, welcome to my episode of Coaching New Age Coach. And I kind of just gave you an intro, but in your own words, why don't you tell the people, our soul vibers, a little bit about you in your own words?
What's up, world? You know, what I've been learning lately is everybody has a story and everybody's story matters. Even though you might not think your story matters, that you'd be surprised at how many people you may touch with your story. True. And my journey actually started probably about 7 years ago when my daughter was born. Mm-hmm. Before the church thing, like, I always was church-based, but like, I grew up in a Catholic home. You know, you grow up and kind of leave that behind and go off and do your own thing. Very heavily into streets, drugs, a whole bunch of stuff like that, you know what I mean? But again, my story...
After that opening clip, that
right?
might not be a good segue.
The opening clip brought me back. It brought me back a little bit. But
it's a good example of change, and you can always write a new story, like you're saying.
Amen. And like I said, my daughter changed my whole life. My wife, crazy side note, I'll tell you a little bit about the story now, obviously, but me and my wife actually plan on doing like a whole documentary on my daughter's birth. But my wife, they said that she would never get pregnant. So she got pregnant and we were the happiest people ever. And fortunately at 16 weeks, 4 days before we were supposed to find out the gender, we lost the baby. So, you know, both devastated. And not even a month and a half later, we found out she was pregnant again. And so now, like, I'm freaking out. Yeah. Called my cousin, who's a pastor in Orlando, and asked her if she could say a prayer. And she kind of, not put me on blast, but made me really think about it. So she was like, I could pray for you. She's like, but I don't know what type of life you're leading. I don't know what you are, how your relationship is with God, but maybe you should reconsider and think about things. So it made me feel like poop, really, you know what I mean? So I went in the corner and I started praying myself, and I was just like, God, like, I don't have anything, you know what I mean? And at the time, the only thing I enjoyed doing was smoking weed, and I was selling a lot of it. So I told him, I'm like, you know what, this is the only thing that I have going for me, and if you give me my baby girl, I'll drop all of it right now. And to this day, I haven't touched it. But, you know, it was a long, long road. My daughter was a micro-preemie. She was born at 24 weeks, 4 days.
Literally hold her in the palm of my hand at the hospital. She was born 1 pound, 7 ounces.
Yep. The diapers they used for her were baby doll diapers, and they were still big on her. And, you know, she had a trach, she had 2 feeding tubes, diagnosed with PCH, which is a rare disease, I'm sorry.
It's both.
A rare disease. I can't give you the medical term, it's way too long. My wife can say it. But it's a rare disease, and she was the first case in the past 12 years when she was diagnosed with it. And got to the point where no cure, end result would be a double lung transplant. So we got a Make-A-Wish trip out of it. We ended up going to Disney, and that trip changed everything. She was on 24-hour oxygen, 5 liters, 5 mLs a day, 24 hours. Heading to that Florida trip, dropped down to about 3 liters of oxygen because the concentrator they gave us would only go up to 3 liters. So fast forward, long story short, she's 7 years old now. She has no trach. One of her feeding tubes are gone. And she's the most happiest,
funniest, sassiest.
I mean,
she gets it from her auntie.
We can insert a picture of video.
Yeah, for sure. This is, I'll put up a little picture of Soraya right here on the screen. We love you, baby. You said that was a turning point in your life from kind of switching to this old life you had, this kind of, you know, street mentality. So would you say that the pregnancy and birth of her and just her health is kind of what we, like, in New Age terms, call kind of like your awakening? I mean, I know you've always been religious, and we'll talk about religion versus spirituality later. Or is there something else that kind of led you through this path and really stepping fully into it?
Yeah, I would definitely say so, because that was really the turning point of everything, you know what I mean? And I always tell people, like, people who ask me about kids, who want kids, and it's like, the way I explain it is like, you think, you know what I mean, you're old, depending on how old you are, you've been through relationships in your life, and you think you've been in love, and you think you know what love is, but you really have no idea what true love is until the moment you look in your kid's eyes. And I would really say that definitely was it. And I was never a person to see signs or catch signs or anything, and like, throughout that whole pregnancy, I was getting signs after sign after sign. Yeah. Got to the point where I was so at peace with it that my wife used to get upset with me, because every time we would get bad news, she'd be like, yo, you seem like you don't care. And it was like, it's not that I don't care. It's just like,
I believe, I trust.
Yo, it's like, yeah, it's all good. Because like, backstory again, going back, is like when we lost the first baby, like I said, I was just getting back into my faith. So I was like, you know what, God, it's all in your hands. And I doubted, you know what I mean? Any believer knows you're not supposed to do that. And I felt like that was the biggest test of my faith, because God was looking at me like, not that I took the baby from you, but more like, you lost the baby, you're going to blame me for that, or you're going to continue to look for me? And I feel like by continuing to look for him and sacrificing what I did for my daughter, I feel like that was my awakening, and to this day, it is my testimony.
Yeah, I think people forget like that point, right? Because even on a spiritual journey, when you start talking to people who go through this, it's always like in this other realm, which we're going to talk about again, why I keep separating spirituality or New Age from religion, but the spirituality world calls it somewhat of a dark night of the soul. And I think people forget, like, it's through the rain that you get the rainbow, right? That's when all of that growth happens. That's when through the struggle is where you find who you are. So on the outside, I just like that, the way you explain that, like to your wife, she's like, how could you just be so calm right now? But it's this understanding, it's this understanding, this unwavering faith that you just somehow know it's all going to be okay, even in the darkest times, because we all need those dark times, and they suck as you're going through them. That doesn't undermine like what you're feeling or the emotions you're going through and the angst and all of the questions in that darkness. It doesn't take away from that experience or invalidate that, but it comes down to perspective, because you can choose to just only see the darkness, or you can choose to also see that after the darkness is that light. So I think that's just a beautiful lesson to anyone on a path overall. In order to be on a path, there are going to be trials and tribulations. That's what life is. Some of them harder and more devastating than others, but they all lead to this greater understanding and growth within you, which then ripples out through your actions and behaviors, which is kind of why you're sitting here today. This is an example of what happens, because then you just need to share your story, and you inspire others, and you give others permission to grieve, to be sad, but also to give them hope in that sadness, because you're on the other side of what they're maybe going through at that time. So with that too, like one of the cool things that you've been doing, kind of segueing, which you've been inspired to do, is really step into your faith in a tangible way by creating apparel, right? By creating Christian clothing line. And why don't you talk a little bit about the brand and kind of show us what we're wearing and how that name came to be?
Originally, I was thinking of the name Led by Grace Apparel, but fortunately somebody had it trademarked already. I have a second daughter, she's 3, and her name is Grace, so hence the name Led by Grace Apparel. And it didn't work out. So then I remember a story that my sister told me when she was on vacation, and she said it was an inside joke. She said GGMB, and I was like, what is that? And then she was like, God got my back. And I was like, where did that come from?
An inside joke with God.
And then that's what she told me. She's like, it's an inside joke that I have with God, that every time I go through a situation and end up coming on the right, or something was put in my path to help me or guide me, I would always laugh and say GGMB.
100%.
So I was like, yeah, I'm still in that.
Quite literally. And then fast forward 3 months later, and I'm wearing a shirt that says GGMB, and God got my back.
But the whole idea of the Christian clothing line is like, I know as a Christian, like, or any messenger of God, our job is to spread the word. So my idea was to have designs on shirts and make matching hats. Like, for example, like this hat would go with the shirt she's wearing. And as you can see, I started embroidering myself, so the hat is a little off, but I wear this hat every day because it was the very first hat I ever made. And you can see this beginning and then after. But like the idea I was saying, like for this sweater, for example, it says, I'm coming, and it has the crown of thorns and a gold crown. So the hat that I'm going to be making for it is going to be scripture. It's going to say Revelation 22:12. So if you look at Revelation 22:12, it talks about Jesus coming back. So so my idea of it is a curious person who sees the scripture on the hat and sees the shirt, they're going to want to know what the meaning is. So it's going to do one of two things. They're either going to Google what the verse means, or they're going to open up their book. And that's basically the idea that I have with the line, that every design on the shirt that I come out with, I would have a matching hat with scripture.
100%. So we're going to link everything below where you can find contact information for my brother if you're interested in any of his clothing line, or if you have any custom designs too, he's more than happy to work with you. So definitely check him out. And kind of segueing off of the whole God got my back, I do want to talk about spirituality versus religion. So I think it's really interesting. Clearly, he's my brother. We grew up in the same family. We had the same childhood, right? So he's mentioned that we grew up Catholic, yet you have two people who sit before you who identify with now Christianity. And, you know, my title here on this channel is New Age Coach. So really more into the mysticism and mystical and the universe and energy and all of these kind of things that come with the kind of New Age revolution. But nonetheless, our core foundation is God, is source, is believing in faith, right? And I bring all that up to say, you know, the first time I started my channel, the first question he had for me after watching some of my videos was, I remember you sent me a text and you were like, okay, you know, I support you, but do you actually believe in God? Like, what has changed or anything like that? And from that day, we've just sparked these amazing conversations. And what came out of it was him leading an e-group. And the message, the reason I'm bringing this up is a message to everyone watching in terms of, it comes down to just opening dialogue about these topics. It's not about what you believe, what I believe, who's right, who's wrong. None of that matters, because what he actually started doing was leading his Christian e-group weekly, right? So he would get a group of small people together. We would hop on a Zoom week to week, and we'd have kind of a theme or something, a topic to watch the day before, and we'd all come together and discuss it. So whether it was gratitude or forgiveness or love. And my point is, I joined those calls with a Christian-based kind of group here who are could read you every verse in the Bible with every meaning. I don't know. All I know is John 3:16 because it was ingrained in my brain since like I was a child, right? For God so loved the world. That's the only one I remember. So it was kind of intimidating for me to join because I was feeling like, are they going to judge me? Am I going to be judgmental? Like, we have kind of different beliefs. But the irony was, in joining this group and these different perspectives, even what we found is we actually all have the same core beliefs. So call it what you may, it doesn't matter, that's all semantics, but we all realize, wow, our fundamental values and how we view the world and how we view faith and how we view the greater divinity beyond us is all the same. And that was the most beautiful part. And what we realized is all the world needs is conversations, right? So what was your take on that whole experience, kind of merging these two ideologies into kind of one group session?
Honestly, I loved it because you hit it right on the head. It's like I had no concern about you joining the group, and I was actually very excited that you were willing to. And like you said, it's like, even though we call it different things, it's basically based on the same foundation. And the e-group stood for encouragement group. It's something that we started in the church because, a lot of us couldn't gather for a while. So to keep like community going and building strong, we started these things called e-groups. So basically somebody would host a group, and like she said, different topics every week. And it wasn't like supposed to be like a Bible study or nothing like that. It was just like a word of encouragement. We did it on Wednesdays, so you would have something to boost you up and keep you going to the rest of the week until you get to your Sunday service if you're a churchgoer. And it really worked out really, really well. I'm also the Lawrence campus lead for small groups, which is kind of basically based off what an e-group is. Those are more like your Bible study groups, different topics, different sermons. People get signed up, join together. And again, during the times that we're in where we can't physically meet up, it'll probably be mostly like an online thing.
So actually, do they still do that? Like if we put some links below for anyone searching for kind of a community or anything like that?
We're actually starting a semester October 14th, I believe. I can link my church to sign up if anybody's interested in signing up for one. Right now we're looking for a host, so the host link will be up to about the 27th for this month, and then the 27th to the 14th will be where you could log on the website, see who's hosting, what type of sermon or study that they're going to be going off of, and if you were interested, you could definitely sign up.
Thank you. So actually, I started this whole question for you around communication and dialogue. So one other cool takeaway I wanted to bring up for like your group is when I came into that session, we would talk about prayer a lot, right? The power of prayer, which I want to ask you about just in general as a topic later in the show. But we started realizing that, one group might call it prayer and another might call it meditation. And then we learned to kind of merge the two and kind of work with the two. So for example, from that session, I took prayer in my own practice as a way to ask for something, right? Whether you're asking God or the universe, it's really that asking mode. And then I got to introduce the kind of idea of meditation, and maybe I didn't call it meditation because some people get turned off by certain words, but meditation is really the receiving mode. So I know my brother always says, he's really good at prayer, and I always ask him to pray for me, and he'll lead us out with a prayer at the end of this, but he's really good at praying and asking, and has solidified that in him, and I'm really good at listening and interpreting and understanding the signs. So oftentimes we'll go back and forth, like he'll be like, this happened to me, and I'll be like, well, this is what I understand from that, or I'll be like, hey, I'm feeling this, can you say a prayer for me this way? So it really created this community, but also this idea of just give and receive too, which is something that's just so important in terms of life lessons. The more you get out there and communicate with the world, you're giving your voice, you're giving your time, you're giving your inspiration, but it's not just for naught, right? You also receive that fulfillment, that purpose, that everything. There's always a give and take in this kind of whole just life journey.
Yeah. The feeling you get from it is absolutely amazing. There's no other feeling. And like to go off what you were saying about calling it meditation and calling it prayer, it really is the same thing because I'm dying to get into a house because the very first thing I'm doing is making a prayer closet. Like a lot of Christians or a lot of people who are really deep in prayer, I'm sure, have their prayer closet or their little area where it's nice and quiet, and they go and they just pray. And what do you do when you meditate? Quiet and you pray, you know what I mean? As far as like the wanting thing, like what you were saying about praying, one thing you gotta understand too is like it's not like God's a genie. It's like, you know what I mean? You can't just be like, I want this, I want this, I want this, you know what I mean? It's crazy because I watched a sermon, and I believe it was Brother Works that I was watching, where he was like a lot of, he called them fake Christians and fake believers who think that they could go to bed at night and be like, God, like, I want patience. Like, no, not even like I want patience. Give me a forgiving heart like yours, and then expect to wake up in the morning and they sprinkle fairy dust on you while you're sleeping, and you wake up with patience and all this forgiveness. And then it doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? Like the way he said it is like, if you're asking for patience and you're asking for forgiveness, what God is going to do, he's going to put somebody in your heart. He's going to put somebody in your life that's going to
test your patience.
He's going to put somebody in your life that's going to hurt you and force you to forgive them. And that's how it really works. And then the main thing that I really learned on my journey too was that he's not going to give you what you want, but he'll definitely always give you what you need.
It's the same thing in spirituality. Like it's manifestation, right? It's also a way of saying in manifestation, you can ask for something, but you can't expect to get it the way you asked for it. Or you might say, I want money, but if you're not very specific or have the right intention or whatever, you might receive money, but it might be in a messed up way, for example, right? So it might not look the way you expect it to look.
It's like the law of attraction, basically. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, if you wake up in the morning and say, I'm running late for work, I hope I don't hit every red light, what happens?
You hit every red light.
It's like you send in that vibe that you put in out there doesn't understand, I don't want every red light. It just understands red light. That's the end. You know what I mean? Yeah. Same thing. Like you wake up in the morning, like, I hope I don't have a bad hair day. You end up with the worst hair day. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have to worry about that. But
yeah, even what you were saying too, though, it's like in the new age world or just in life, forget like labels that we're putting on it. I'm just doing that for ease of this video. But you were saying you're not just, if you ask for patience, you're not just going to have a heart of gold all of a sudden. You're going to get something that tests your patience. That's like the mirror effect. That's what we always talk about, is everything in this life, in your world, in your existence, your 3D plane right now, like you are a mirror to me right now. Like there's actually something that is about you that I see myself in you because you're my mirror. So there might be things that annoy the hell out of me about you, but it really ends up being you're here to show me those things that are annoying about you, because those are things that I haven't grappled with for myself that annoy me about me. So I just like how you phrase that whole kind of, you're not going to get patience, you're going to get situations that test your patience. Everything is a mirror that way. That's what this journey is about. It's that learning lesson, and you can't learn without going through those types of experiences, kind of similar to what we were saying about those dark periods in your life that grow you exponentially, like, because you wouldn't have anything else to compare it if it was all rainbows and butterflies.
Seriously. The one thing I've been learning too on my journey is that you need to be uncomfortable. Like if you're comfortable, then you're not really on the path that you want to be at. You know what I mean? Like in order to get right and follow Jesus and do the right thing, is like you really need to be uncomfortable. And that's one thing that I've been challenging with myself. Like, I thank you a lot for the compliment as far as praying, because that's one thing I've been asking him. Like, I want to be that person. I ask God all the time, like, yo, give me the courage to speak out and pray. You know what I mean? I want to be that person that somebody needs a prayer, I can just stay up and pray. And then every time I have the opportunity to do it, I get shy, I get scared, and I don't do it. You know what I mean? And I walk away, and sometimes I feel like, wow, I just missed a blessing. Or if I missed a blessing, what if I was supposed to be a blessing for somebody else at that time and I didn't do it? So I've been working on that on myself lately too. And to be honest, like, I'm still shy and scared to pray. Like, I'm not a seasoned Christian by all means. Like, you know what I mean? I've been back in, like I said, I got back into my faith about 7 years back with my daughter. I was always very skeptical about churches. Didn't like churches. Most of the churches I went to were Catholic churches. And it was more like a fashion show and being judged and stuff like that. So I was very, very skeptical. But I finally found a church that I'm very comfortable with. And I've been there for going on 3 years now. I mean, I serve. We're one church, multiple locations. So like I serve on my campus. I do help with the lights. I help set up, tear down. Like I said, I'm the small group lead for my campus. And like,
yeah, I think something we both agree on, which is so important on a journey overall, is it always comes down to service. Like you said, the first thing you said was you're here to spread the message, right? That's being of service. Even on the path that I am, it's serving humanity, because it's in that serving of humanity, it's full circle. It comes back. The energy you put out there comes back to you. So it's not to do something from like a selfish ego perspective, like I'm going to do this so I can get all this back, but it's like the pouring into others. And you can't actually do that pouring into others because you have to do the pouring into yourself first through this journey. And that's that kind of giving, receiving energy that I was talking about before. But you and I are super into volunteerism and kind of service to the world. Any way we can help, creating little charities, giving money where you can, volunteering your time if you don't have resources like money. So why don't you continue talking about a few other things that you had, like your backpack service or feeding the homeless before, some of the projects that you've created, Good Dad Gang, things like that you kind of stepped into as a result.
A lot of the stuff I don't promote, because the Bible will say don't ever let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And that's what it is. Like a lot of people you see videotaping themselves feeding the homeless. You see them videotaping themselves giving money out, and it's like they doing that for self-gratification. They're doing that for likes and comments. And when you do that, you're taking away from the good deed. It's no longer a good deed because you're using it wrong. You know what I mean? And like to speak on it, like I did a canned food drive, a food can drive, however you want to call it, a couple of years back. And I ended up just putting up signs around my neighborhood. I set up a little tent in front of my apartment. And I ended up with like 12 to 15 boxes of canned goods. And it was a canned good and book drive. I actually videotaped the process of that. And I went and I delivered some to Lazarus' house. Like I tried to give most of the food to Lazarus' house. And God forgive me, but I just felt that it was almost like me being a burden to them. So I didn't give them all of it. I gave them probably like a third of everything that I had. The books, they sent me to their thrift shop. So I basically gave them 5 or 6 boxes of books, and they're going to turn around and sell. So I didn't really like that much either. I ended up taking the rest of the food exactly straight to the homeless underneath the bridge. And that feeling that you get a gratification after that is like, it's like a natural high. It's like a natural high that you want to chase it again because that feeling is so amazing.
Yeah.
And it really is just about serving. So like I done that when I was doing some of the things in the world that I shouldn't have been doing. Had a little extra money. I donated 30 to 35 book bags to the Boys and Girls Club full of school supplies for the kids. I helped volunteer with my boy Al. He runs Rocksteady Boxing. It's a boxing program for people with Parkinson's disease. It's an awesome program. Every Thanksgiving he gives out more and more Thanksgiving dinners. I was blessed to help him out a couple of years with that. My good friend Terminology, he owns Good Dad Gang apparel. Good Dad Gang and Good Mom Gang. I said that wrong. Good Mom Gang. You could check that website out too. He does amazing. First time he did the book bag, he was back to school. I think he did like 100, and like now he's up to like 500 book bags every year, and keeps growing and growing. So like it's an amazing movement. Definitely for all you dads out there, moms out there, check him out because it's a great movement. Yeah. And it's really anytime I can help somebody, I can. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's not even on these scales for programs too. Like there are some things you can't plug in, like you said here, because it's on a personal one-to-one, like helping out someone who has a sick family member, or picking up kids, or volunteering time, or there are personal things you do day to day that don't, like buying a coffee for someone behind you, things of that nature. But what I do actually want to interject here is something that popped into my head as you were talking about not promoting, these good deeds on social media. And it brought up this whole point going back to communication and open dialogue about another cool thing in this dynamic is, and something I want to call out, is it's okay to challenge people's ideas and opinions too, right? Or their beliefs even. It's challenging, but that's what I'm talking about by open discourse, because I would actually challenge what you said and say, it depends on intention. So I don't necessarily think it's good or bad to share it or not share it. Like it doesn't just have to be that black and white. Same concept with money, right? You can look at money like it's evil, or you could look at money as a tool that will exponentially help you get to more people and promote. Like if you have a huge following, you can use that platform. You can use money. You can use social media as a tool for good. So I think it's all about intentionality when it comes to doing good service, to kind of challenge what you said about putting it out there or what's right and wrong. But my whole point, even in saying that to you and challenging you, is that's what we should be doing to each other. We should be calling each other out with respect and compassion, and coming from a place of understanding, not right or wrong, right? But coming from a true place of understanding, so that you both leave a situation or conversation with growth, with a new perspective, because it's through this conversation that you're able to take your experiences, your beliefs, and pair it with new information. And that's when you can physically change the structure of your brain that will then give you different options and potentials in your reality, right? It even comes down to science outside of spirituality and religion, actual physiology. So speaking back to communication and this open dialogue and challenging people's ideas or ideologies, right? There's something else that you are working on behind the scenes. So it's not quite official, but there is a Facebook page that we can send people back to right now in its beginning stages. So I'll link that below. But a cool project you're working about is doing just that. It's kind of putting an alternative perspective around things out there, things that people aren't talking about, right? We're all bombarded with social media, with the news outlets, mainstream conceptions and beliefs, and all of this information, right? It's hard to know what's truth and fiction, right? Which is also why this path is so important, because you have to have that inner understanding and gut feeling and trust and faith that you're consuming the right things to help you on your journey, right? So that's why it's so important to be centered and to have that core value and belief. But you've created a platform to talk about things that people aren't really talking about. So why don't you introduce that concept and tell us a little bit about that idea and what it's intended for?
All right. I ran a website a few years ago that actually did really, really well, and caught a couple of viruses that were gonna cost me a lot more money than I could afford to fix. So I ended up just dropping the website, and it's sad because I reached like 500,000 unique visitors within the first year and a half of the website. So I was debating and talking to myself about starting a new website, and I took it a prayer. And in my prayer, I got that it was okay to do the website, but don't use it for personal gain. So therefore, all my ads and everything went straight out the window. But
that's a good lesson, though. Pausing you there, when you get that intuitive nudge or that insight from God, you listen. You don't question, right? It's easy to do the easy thing to make money, but it's the hardest thing to kind of follow the path. Yeah. It's one thing to get it, but it's another thing to follow it. So that's just a cool little lesson there. But
so the idea that I came out was not talking about it. And I was like, wow, all these things that people are not talking about. So I went, got the domain name, it's nottalkingaboutit.com. Still very, very beginning stages. Made a Facebook page just because I wanted to put it out there for basically to get the wheels rolling. Like, I'm not posting every day like I should be, but it's just something for me to put out there where it can manifest into eventually it happening. So right now I'm looking for a logo. The domain name is mine. Got a friend that does websites, so just waiting on a good time to link up with him where we could actually sit and plan it out. But there is a Facebook page of it. There is a few posts. I try to at least post once a day on it, at least, just to
What's your
keep
goal?
it going.
So what is this supposed to, like, what's your intention behind setting this up? Or like what you want people to understand?
A lot of people say they're woke, but at the end of the day, what is really woke? Like, all these people who say they woke talk about one side or one perspective or one narrative. And there's a whole nother narrative. Like, everybody knows there's 3 sides to every story. There's yours, mine, and the truth. You know what I mean? So it's like a lot of people see a meme and they share that meme like it's fact-checked and not the absolute truth. And even like fact checks, nobody even knew what a fact check was till about 6 months ago. So it's like, how true are these fact checks? So it's like, I try to lean towards a lot of the posts and a lot of the stories that go against what everybody seems to be posting in the narrative that everybody seems to go with. And right now, just because it's election time of the year and everything that you see is really political, there is a bunch of political stuff on there. But I try to mix it up between political and spiritual. The more I get into it, the more I have time to dibble and dabble in it, it'll probably be more of the entertainment and a little bit about everything. And it's basically just that things that you hear, but things that you really don't hear, things that they don't talk about. And as I always say, just because they don't talk about it doesn't mean it's not there, or just because they don't talk about it doesn't mean it's not true.
Yeah, so, and the message is, regardless of what you post there or not, I think the main intention, like, you can go there and really disagree or not, but the point is you're opening up conversation to say, but what about this? Because one of my favorite quotes all the time is, we don't know what we don't know. So in your case, you're trying to promote like a different avenue of what we don't know. We're just fed information. That doesn't mean that it's just that way. You have to take the time to do your own research, to dig a little bit deeper, to go beyond the surface. And that's in a tangible way in a world we live in. We're all humans. We have to be on this earth, and we have certain ways we get information and research, especially what is made available to us. It's already curated from that kind of level. But that's why, again, we go back to this idea of the spiritual work on top of that, because it's not just what you're digesting. It's about opening up different perspectives, questioning everything, and then taking that back and praying on it or meditating on it and listening to what it actually translates for you. You might not even agree with the post, but something in a post that just triggers something for you might set you down a rabbit hole that changes your entire life or perspective. So it's not about reading it and being like, oh, this dude posted something about Republican Party or Democrat Party or conspiracy theorists. It's not about the actual content sometimes, as it is the message to, I'm going to challenge you. I'm purposely trying to maybe trigger you even, because in that triggering, that's what gets us fired up. Emotion is what sometimes causes our action. So if you're just complacent, that emotion that gets you fired up and disbelief or whatever, or just turning your cheek, that's going to make you go act and do something, which is going to, you know, be a whole path.
And that's what I feel was going on right now. A lot of people are going off feelings and not facts. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's crazy. It's like, I could sit here and tell you the truth from beginning to end. I could tell you nothing but facts and truth. But the truth to it is, if you don't like me as a person, you're not going to believe anything I tell you, or you're not going to want to believe anything that I tell you. And it's sad, that's the world that we live in. And not even that too is like, the world that we're living in too is like, everything is so taken out of context. And that goes to that thing that I told you I wanted to do, that little the little experiment thing that I wanted to do. I want to write a paragraph and read it, and then basically cut it up where it totally means something not even close to what it intentionally meant.
Yeah, we'll show both sides. We'll show like what the actual conversation was, and then we'll show it slice and dice for a different angle, so you can see how things can be misconstrued. And it's just another way of making an idea tangible, again, to challenge your perspective and to question things, right? Because if you're just taking a piece of content without understanding where it came from, who has an invested interest in it, what's actually truth for you, right? Because you keep saying truth like you know truth, but I don't think anyone knows truth. I think truth is a subjective thing for everybody. That's your experiences. That's what you're like. No one knows in essence what the ultimate truth is. We only know our truth. The point I do want to pull out that you said is that it's not about listening to you. Like you said, it's not even worth your breath. It's not worth my breath. This channel, what you do, it's not about being like, this is truth, this is truth, this is true. Trust me, follow me. I'm gonna tell you everything. I know everything. It's actually the opposite. The more evolved you become on a spiritual path, you realize the less you have to say, because you embody it. You know who you are. You know your truth. And it's inspiring more so than projecting out, right? It's inspiring others to start to learn their own truth. So you're actually leading by example. That's all we have to do on this path, is just lead by example, not tell anyone anything, because until they have to go, we always talk about experience. Someone has to experience something themselves personally to be able to relate to what you're saying. There are some things I've talked about on my channel where I'm like, yeah, I could tell you I've seen green light shining out of my forehead, that I've seen third eyes in people's head, that I've seen some weird stuff, that I feel like I've talked to God before, right? I could say all that because that's true for me. Are you going to believe that? Probably not. Do I need you to? No. Does that help you believe in God? No, because you didn't experience that, you know? So it's not about just like the forcing of it, you know? And I think religion and spirituality get a bad rap because so many people try to force it.
I want to look at it as like sowing a seed. You know what I mean? When you said that, like, you don't have to believe it, but it could trigger something. Like, I call it sowing a seed. Like, I could ask you, like, hey, I don't know what your beliefs are, you know what I mean? Like, do you believe in God? And if you be like, don't really know, never thought of it. Like, all right, you know, I just wanted you to let you know, Jesus loves you, you know what I mean? And then I can just walk away. I don't even have to say anything. And then whatever you think about, or whatever God puts in your heart and your mind throughout the rest of the day, is going to be between you and him. But I planted that seed. I sowed that seed. Whether it grows up and produces fruit, or whether it withers and dies, I planted the seed, you know what I mean? And that's basically all you got to do. And then from your perspective, it's the same thing. Like she was saying, like, whatever she says, whether you don't like it or not, but it may trigger something in you that might send you down a rabbit hole where it could change your life possibly.
And not even from a spiritual perspective. Like, maybe you start researching quantum physics or metaphysics or life science or whatever, because you're like, how could she possibly experience that, right? Like, even if it just begged that question in your mind for you to go down a rabbit hole that led to something Like some people need facts, some people need science, some people need medicine, some people need psychology, some people need spirituality. I say this in all my videos. They all have common principles. It's just the words as humans we use. That's why communication is so important. We all put labels on things based on our own experiences. We all put our personal judgment on things, but we're limited to words. And it's like we don't know how to use our words correctly to convey what we all mean. Because at the end of the day, I truly believe that we all as humans like have core needs and values that translate as like what we call faith. Like just basic human needs of compassion, of love, of like understanding. Like to me, you can take those concepts and apply them to any of those things that I just said, whether it's psychology, science, you know, spirituality, etc. Kind of gonna segue into like a different topic here off of that, because I think we've touched on a couple life lessons and themes overall that we've learned through this kind of journey, just an organic conversation here. But I want to kind of solidify it and really ask, like, what are some of the lessons, or your main lesson, or even a lesson you're going through right now? When I say lesson, I mean theme, or like just what are you dealing with, or what's your biggest kind of aha moments on your journey right now that you could share with the audience?
Well, right now is like, I feel the season is definitely changing. Like throughout this whole pandemic, I've been blessed to work the whole time. Financially, throughout the whole pandemic, I was blessed. I was blessed to even be a blessing to other people. But now my wife's currently out of work, and I feel the season changing. I feel financially depleting a little bit, so I have a feeling it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable. You know what I mean? We're going through a season of being uncomfortable, which is good if you were listening to me what I was saying earlier, I guess. But in my way now, it's like it's my time to go through the storm. So am I going to praise God through the storm still? And
that's the truth of the faith.
And that's exactly what I got to do. You know what I mean? I got to know that God got me, and he's going to give me what I need to get through this. And I know, but as being human...
You mean God got your back? Is that
exactly,
what you mean?
Exactly. But being human, you know, we all have feelings. We all, like, no matter how spiritual or how crazy you are, or what you feel, or what your faith is, you're human. So all those emotions are going to be there. You're going to be feeling, you're going to be tempted, you're going to be tested. And that's what it is. It's like, how do you overcome it? Or how do you ride the storm? You know what I mean?
It's true. Again, I think that's a life lesson overall, because I've been feeling the tides the same. And I think there's always this collective feeling too, right? So I asked you what you're learning. And I think so often, again, this is why conversation's important, right? Because the more you start talking, other people are like, oh, I feel that way too. Or so I think there's this collective energy, if you will, just for lack of a better word right now. But we all kind of ride these waves together. And I think one of the main lessons, like you said, in life is this practice of riding waves, because that is what the journey is. We can't control anything, right? That's a big lesson. We're just humans. I mean, you can control what you can control, but there is a significant amount of things that are just out of your control by nature. So this whole thing is like a dance, or like riding waves. And the more you know how to go with the ups and like really move and be inspired and take action and do all these things when you're on that upswing, like you were just like recently, like you were explaining, where you're being of service, you're out there, you're promoting your business, you're doing all these things because you're on that up wave. But eventually everything that goes up, right? Laws of gravity, it must come down. It's the way we can learn so much from nature, because that's just how universal laws work. That's how nature works, right? So it has to come down. And that's learn to ride the wave, but learn how to sink, learn how to surrender into that, learn how to feel when that time is coming, because when you're on that up, that's when you can be preparing, because you know you're going to be coming down. And it's not a process that you learn overnight, but that's what this spiritual path is. It's learning what your waves are so that you can go through them with grace. Like ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. We're all going to go through it, so we might as well learn how to be graceful in it, how to be humble in it, how to be compassionate in it, how to serve in it, how to just, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's a lesson in this. I don't even know how to put it into words. It's just, you got to learn this motion and be comfortable with it. Yeah. Because you're going to be uncomfortable. But what you can be, you can take control back and still be comfortable, because you know it's coming like this. So ultimately, you can look at it as being uncomfortable, or you can shift your perspective and say, I'm comfortable because I already know this game. I know I'm going to be uncomfortable. So I hold the power because I get to say I'm comfortable even though I'm uncomfortable. That was so...
What I say is...
Look at me. Can I get credit? That was good. That was good.
What I would say is let go and let God.
Oh, I just said it like, basically 3 hours of me talking was like that in one sentence.
But going back to what she said, the best part about being down is there's only one way to go after that.
Yeah.
And that's back up.
Exactly. I think that's a huge lesson.
And it also goes to show, like, what she was saying, too, on that is that everybody's story matters. Everybody's story matters. Like, your story matters. And believe me, it's crazy. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. I did a video about my church, talking about what I was saying earlier, how I didn't like church, and I found a church, and I was just basically talking about my church. Little did I know, in like 3 days, I had like 1,500 views on Facebook. I've had a family reach out to me, ask me about the church. They recently got connected and was saved the very next week. Her husband was saved the week after, and they were just recently baptized. And it's crazy because as a Christian, like, I'm part of that story. Actually,
I think it's a good segue into your YouTube channel, which is Becoming a New Creation. I'll link that below. It's a pivot, right? So you might see some old stuff on there from your previous life, but you're really taking control back of that channel because you want to be promoting a message, like you said. And I think what you said is amazing because you're out there to share your story. And I think it's a lesson for everybody. So often people are like, oh, you know, oh, another person starting a YouTube channel. Oh, another Facebook message. Oh, another community group. Oh, but you know what? There's enough to go around. That's such like a lack mentality. People, it's again perspective. What I'm trying to say is there's enough for everybody. Nature is abundant. This world is abundant. Lessons are abundant. Sharing is abundant, right? So my story might not mean anything to people who are in your community, vice versa. So that's why it's so important to use your voice because we each are so unique. And that's why it doesn't matter if there's a million YouTube channels, which there are, because the people who are meant to hear your message are going to be attracted to you. And the way I say the same message might not be the way they interpret the message. So it's important to have a community of people who are all stepping into their own authenticity, their own individual, sharing their own personal story for that exact reason, because it becomes like a chain, right? You start linking. And that's really the true purpose. But I always think it's funny when people are so closed off to like sharing or comparing or creating communities or collaborating like on these sessions. You'd be surprised how many people are closed off to it. But it's like, it's not about subscribers. It's not about counts. It's not about any of that. What we're doing, we're sharing the light ultimately. There's no reason we should not be doing that within our own communities.
Communication is amazing. Like, I have a friend, a very, very good friend, actually lived with me for a while, and he's Muslim. You know what I mean? And like, we would sit up all night before I was saved and all that. We would sit up all night playing PlayStation and just debating between Islam and Christianity. And the same thing, like I got another friend that's into Buddhism. So it's like, and it's the same thing. We can have these conversations, and that's the best thing about it is like, some people have these conversations and they end up in fights. Yeah. But the best part is where you can actually have a conversation as a brother and feel each other. And even though you might not agree with what each other say, but you can sit there and listen. And it's like, I'm a type of person that I'll tell you straight out, like, listen, I'm not here to push my faith on you, but I'm definitely going to share and tell you about my faith. Yeah. And you take it however you want to take it. And as far as my channel, like, my channel is not even... The purpose of my channel, to be honest, is not even to be on the channel. It's basically trying to use it almost like as a confessional. Like just basically share my stories, share some testimonies. Like, I believe I privatized all of my previous videos on there because it has nothing to do with the person I'm trying to be. And I believe there's only one video up now, and it's called The Power of Prayer, where I share a testimony. And I almost want to do that. It's like not even just about me. Like, I want to do like a testimony Tuesday or a testimony Monday or something like that, and just post people's testimonies just to show that everybody's story really matters.
Yeah, it matters. And I love what you just said, because I think so often, like, it's a two-way street, right? We talk about sharing and collaborating and building community that way, and everyone has a story. But then we're so quick to judge ourselves, and like, we too have a story. We're so critical on ourselves that way. So I think that's a beautiful lesson. But I loved what you said, because even on my channel, when I explain my channel to other people, I actually say, you know what, take it or leave it. Like, my channel, like, I actually find myself watching videos that I made a year ago that are so relevant to me. Like, I thought I was talking to the world in that video, right? Like, here's a lesson, here's what I'm going through. And then I watched that video a year later and I'm like, oh, I'm talking to me now. Like, I needed my own message for me. And you forget your own power that way too. So I think it's a full circle kind of thing that way too, and the power of sharing your message. It's a reminder for you and your power, but also like you're learning yourself too in this journey.
It's crazy because you said it a year later you were talking to yourself. I went to a men's conference, a Warriors conference, like 2 years ago for my first time, and I was roommates with this kid Lewis, and he told me he did this thing where every time he read a Bible verse that really meant something to him or hit him hard, he wrote it down. And at the end of the year, he read them all together, and it was basically like a letter from God to him. So I was so intrigued with that. That's awesome. From the moment of that conference, the conference was at the end of May, early June. My birthday is the end of December, so I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do the same thing. And it's crazy that I did it, and by New Year, I read it on New Year's, and it was legit a straight letter to myself, beautiful. And it was amazing. That I'm actually on part 2 now, so that's cool. That's probably something I'll share on my channel too soon.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was truly, truly amazing. And that's what you said is when you're genuine and you speak the truth, and it's like classic music. It's never bad. You could listen to it 10 years ago, and it's still
timeless.
Exactly,
timeless.
That's the word I was looking for. It's timeless.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for your time. So let's wrap up this segment with you. And why don't you share just final parting words, wisdom, any advice to anybody just on whatever path they're on? What final words of wisdom would you give?
I would say, depending what journey you're on, if you have doubts, what I tell everybody all the time is like, if I ever tell you something and you question it, like, don't take it from me, take it to God. You know what I mean? Ask God, be like, God, what this man said, is it right? Is it wrong? Is it true? And he'll put it in your heart whether it's right or wrong. You know what I mean? One thing I've been working on myself too is I've been praying to God to not let me share and not let me put anything out there that is not right. Because the one thing I would never want to do is push somebody away from God. You know what I mean? So it's like I always ask, I always pray, like if it's not meant for me to share it, then make sure I put it in my heart where I don't want to share it. And if it's meant for me to share it, then put it in my heart for me to share it.
Yeah, it's intention. Like you said, that's why intention is so important, because it fundamentally guides how you're going to behave, what you choose to do, what you don't choose to do. And if you have a good intention, you can do no wrong, literally. Like, ultimately, there's literally no way you could mess it up. As long as you're coming from a good place, yeah, I'm sure it can be misconstrued or accidents can happen. That's why communication is important. But everything comes down to the why behind everything. And if it's from your heart, like, literally, like, you can't mess up in this life if it's coming from your heart. That's how I believe.
That's what I tell everybody. I tell everybody to follow your heart, because your heart's not going to lie to you. The answer is love. The answer is love. Like, you know what I mean? Number 1 commandment, love thy neighbor. Like, you know what I mean?
And also love thyself. It's both.
It's love. Love is the answer.
Yes, that's so true. And actually, self-plug, I know there's going to be a video coming out that my good friend Ariana at the Realm of Prosperity is going to be putting on her channel. It's a hypnosis session where that fundamental principle came out, where love is the answer. But the caveat to that came out of my session, love is the answer, it's not the action. I think that's where a lot of people get it twisted, because you can't just be nilly-willy, free the world, everything is solved by love, like you said with the whole prayer. You can't just wake up and be patient because you asked for patience. It's not just like love's gonna solve everything magically, right? No, love is the answer always, but it's not the action. Love is what guides your actions, okay? But you have to do something in order to physicalize the love, right? And an example that came out of that session was, if you get into a fight with your partner, right? You love your partner, but your partner's not going to know that you're sorry, that you've learned from that mistake, that anything, if you don't act, right? That's why they say actions speak louder than words. So that love has to be represented in a physical way, or in a way that someone can receive it, but also like that you're inspired to make changes in whatever way that might be. All right, so again, thank you so much for your time. I will put all links, you're welcome, all links below, so make sure you check those out. And like I promised, if I may ask you to just lead us out in a prayer.
You ready?
I was born ready.
Father God, I thank you for this time that I got to spend with my sister. I thank you for technology, because without this, who would even hear any of this? This message right here, no matter who's watching this or who can watch this in the future or click on this, they might hear something in here that might change their life. You know what I mean? And I just pray that everybody that listens to this message feels something in their heart, whether it's God, the universe, whatever you feel, whatever you believe, or wherever your faith is in. I pray that this opens your heart and you feel every moment of it, and you just know that everything that we spoke today came straight from our hearts, and from us it's nothing but the truth. Will be our story every time you ask us. And I just pray that no matter what situation that you're going through, may God brighten your day. If you're in a dark place, hopefully this message spread a little bit of light, because a little bit of light can go far for a person in a dark place. All it takes is a little bit of light to guide the way. And I thank you for everything that you do for me. I thank you for everything you do for my sister. I thank you for all you out there listening in, for all you that are commenting. And I just pray that you have a blessed week, month, year. And I pray that everything is well with you and your families through this pandemic. And as long as we stay together and stay united, we will overcome this like we do everything. As long as we put God first. Thank you. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Peace out.